What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another live Lift Heavy, Roll Hard Q&A. We're gonna be going over a bunch of questions that you guys submitted as it pertains to getting brutally strong, packing on slabs of muscle, and improving your conditioning on the mat so you never gas out again. If you guys have follow-up questions on anything that we talked about in this live Q&A, feel free to drop them in the comments below and enjoy the Q&A. What are some good back exercises at Planet Fitness for BJJ? So when we talk about back training, like two of the main things that we're gonna focus on is gonna be vertical pulling, horizontal pulling, and we can also look at like this pullover movement. And so really just spamming those three movements are gonna be great for training your back. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. You can do horizontal rowing exercises with dumbbells, with machines, with barbells. You can do them with chest support. So like one of my favorite back strength exercises for grapplers is a chest supported dumbbell row. You can do those at Planet Fitness. Some other rowing exercises could be like cable rows. You can use machine-based rows. Like if you have like a hammer strength row machine, I think those are freaking great. I love using those. If you're gonna be doing pulling exercises for building up your upper back strength and even your mid back strength, it's good to mix up the different ways that you're training it, because it's good to go heavy and do like heavy one-arm dumbbell rows and stuff like that, but it's also good to do heavy machine rows, heavy hammer strength rows, especially if you have access to machines. And I don't know if they have machines like this at Planet Fitness, machines where you can change the strength curve. So there are some back machines, I think they're called prime mover machines, where you can change the emphasis on what's the most difficult part of the row. So you can make the start of the row most difficult, or you can change the leverages a little bit so that way the top of the row is most difficult. And I like to do a lot of rowing exercises like that because you're able to kind of strengthen all aspects of the strength curve. So rowing exercises, whether it's machine, dumbbell, barbells, those are gonna be a big one. Vertical pulling is also gonna be huge for strengthening your back for grappling sports. Pull-ups, chin-ups, and really any sort of bodyweight pulling exercise or vertical pulling exercise is gonna be huge. And I'd also encourage you guys to not get stuck only doing pull-ups and only doing chin-ups. Like get really creative and try out a lot of different stuff with your pull-up exercises. So neutral grip pull-ups, false grip pull-ups, ring pull-ups, even doing like mixed grip pull-ups and things like that can be good to mix in there. And then also like your machine lat pull down stuff I think is also great. And I'd say like an old school bodybuilding exercise that doesn't get enough love from grappling athletes is gonna be the dumbbell pullover. The dumbbell pullover, where it's not necessarily a row and it's not necessarily a vertical pull down, but you're doing like this shoulder, shoulder pull down exercise. That's going to be huge because it's great for strengthening your lats, your serratus, a lot of the muscles around your ribs. And it's great for improving your overhead mobility too, because you're just getting a nasty loaded stretch on the lats, and it can be great for improving T-spine mobility. So if you're at Planet Fitness and you only have access to like some basic pieces of equipment and you do a lot of heavy dumbbell machine rows, I don't think they got barbells at Planet Fitness, but you do that, you mix in some pull-ups, you mix in some lat pull-downs, chin-ups, things like that, and then do dumbbell or machine pullovers. That's like a good all-encompassing approach to train your back, whether you're at Planet Fitness or any other gym. Should you do glycolytic/lactic conditioning 1 to 2 times a week? And is it okay to do year-round, 52 weeks out of the year? So this is a fantastic question. So when we have glycolytic and lactic conditioning, that is one aspect of conditioning. So when we look at conditioning, we got to make sure we kind of address all the different types of conditioning. So you have your main energy systems, which are going to be your anaerobic energy systems, and then your aerobic energy systems. Anaerobic energy systems are broken up into 2 categories. We have ATP-PC, or ATP phosphocreatine energy system. That is mostly used with exercises or movements or physical activity that's very, very, very intense, very explosive, and a very short burst of energy. So most lifting exercises, most explosive takedowns and things like that, things that take around 10 seconds or less to complete, are going to fall within that ATP-PC energy system. Then we kind of move into still some of that higher intensity forms of physical activity and conditioning, but longer than about 10 seconds and upwards of about 2 minutes. And that's going to be your fast glycolysis energy system. And then we have our oxidative energy system, or our typical aerobic energy system. That's like lower intensity, long duration type of stuff. And so when we're doing jiu-jitsu, or we're doing combat sports, whether you're doing MMA, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, lifting weights, whatever, it's not that you're only using one of those energy systems at a time. All three of those energy systems are kind of at work all the time, but you're going to emphasize one over the other depending on the physical activity that you're doing. So if you are running a marathon that is very, very, very heavy and emphasizing the oxidative or aerobic energy system, but occasionally you're also going to be using your ATP PC and your fast glycolysis energy system. When you're powerlifting, so you're only doing like a 1 rep max squat bench deadlift, yeah, you're really emphasizing a lot of that ATP PC energy system, but the fast glycolysis and oxidative energy systems are also at work. They're just not being emphasized as much. When we look at something like jiu-jitsu, or we look at other combat sports like wrestling and MMA, those are mixed energy system sports. So we're using all three of those energy systems, and at any point during training, those things are going to be emphasized. So if you're doing a bunch of like wrestling rounds where it's like take them down, let them up, take them down, let them up again, it's going to be very explosive. It's going to be very twitchy. You're going to emphasize a little bit more on ATP PC and fast glycolysis. If you're doing just like a 30-minute flow roll, it's going to emphasize a little bit more on oxidative on that oxidative conditioning or oxidative energy system. And so we look at glycolytic stuff, or conditioning that emphasizes a little bit more on that fast glycolysis energy system. So stuff that's taken about 30 seconds to 2 minutes at a very high intensity. That type of conditioning is fantastic for grappling athletes. And I think grappling athletes, a mistake that they make with their conditioning is that they don't do that enough. They do a lot of either low intensity, long duration conditioning, and then they roll really hard, but they don't like get in the pain cave and do a lot of glycolytic type of conditioning. So all that being said, Noe, back to your question, should you do glycolytic or lactic conditioning 1 to 2 times a week? An example of what that might look like could be like, say you're on a fan bike doing 6 rounds of 30 seconds on, 90 seconds off. You can definitely do that 1 to 2 times a week, and you can definitely do that year round, 52 weeks out of the year. I would encourage you, though, to look at what is the main goal of the phase of training that you're in. You can always do 1 rep max deadlifts. You can do a 1 rep max deadlift 52 weeks out of the year. Is that going to be the best thing for your overall athletic development? Probably not, mainly because doing heavy 1 rep max deadlifts may be good for a certain season or a certain phase of training, probably not the entire year. The same logic and same thought process applies when you're doing glycolytic and lactic conditioning. So there may be aspects, maybe when you're deep into training camp and you need to build out your conditioning to get ready for a really hard competition, that may be a really good time to work on some of that high intensity suckfest kind of conditioning, some of the glycolytic lactic conditioning. And yeah, you could do that 1 to 2 times a week. So say you do that in training camp, you go compete. After you go compete, unless that's like an enormous weakness that you need to continue to develop, you could probably focus on other types of conditioning for a little bit of while. So that way you start developing, you have a more well-rounded and more developed base of conditioning, as opposed to only focusing on one type of conditioning. The last example that I'll give for that is like, could you work on guard passing 1 to 2 times a week? It's like, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Should you only work on guard passing 52 weeks out of the year? Probably not. You want to work on some other stuff too, so you can be a more well-rounded grappler. Same approach and same, at least in my mind, the same thought process applies for conditioning development. Any tips for lower back pain or lower back stress in general? Love your podcast, by the way. My man, thank you so much. I'm glad you're digging the podcast. I love podcasting. It's so much freaking fun. So, tips for lower back pain and lower back stress. There's so much that goes into lower back pain. There's so much that goes into how to get out of lower back pain. I had lower back pain for years, and There's a lot of great information out there, and because there's so much great information, sometimes they can kind of conflict with each other. So there's some schools of thought that look at lower back pain and say, oh, lower back pain comes from you have a weak posterior chain and you're not bracing hard enough on all of your lifts. It's like, oh, well, that could definitely be true, but we're definitely not going to have a straight back in jiu-jitsu. There's going to be a ton of instances where we have a rounded spine in jiu-jitsu or we have a twisted spine in jiu-jitsu. So if you want to build a spine and build a lower back that can handle some of that stress, that means in the gym you should intentionally train with a rounded back or with a twist in your spine, so that way you can build strength in those ranges of motion. And so if someone has lower back pain, usually one of the first things that I suggest is let's first of all just stop doing what is causing the most amount of lower back pain. So when people do consult calls with me or I meet them in person or they message me and they say, hey coach, I always have lower back pain when I do heavy conventional deadlifts. What are your tips? My first tip is usually like, hey, for right now, let's stop doing heavy conventional deadlifts and let's do something else. Or if someone says, hey, coach, I always have back pain when I get stack passed. It's like, well, probably stop getting stack passed. Like if, either change up your training partners or just just let the person pass and like save your back for another day. While you're avoiding some of the things that cause a bunch of lower back pain, you can very slowly and gradually start to build up strength and capacity for your lower back to better handle some of that stress. So if you have lower back pain when you get stacked in jiu-jitsu, or if you have lower back pain when you do heavy conventional deadlifts, build up all the areas above and below your lower back that are going to contribute to helping protect that section of your spine. So build up your posterior chain, your glutes and your hamstrings. Build up your upper back. Build up your spinal mobility. Build up your hip mobility. So that way, overall, all the things that are connected to your lower back can move better and are stronger. And then you can apply that mobility and apply that strength to be better able to handle some of those stressors on the mat. I know for me, when my back pain was the absolute worst, it was when I was powerlifting, which was I was keeping my spine perfectly straight and I'd move up and down and I had no rotational ability. Once I started including more rotational strength exercises, started building up my capacity to be strong and mobile in rotation, within like a couple months, my back pain completely went away. When I was powerlifting, like my hip mobility wasn't great. So once I started working on my hip mobility, my lower back pain continued to decrease. And then the other thing too is just making sure that like you're not doing more stuff that like adds, I don't want to say adds insult to injury, but like I found for me with my neck, like doing blast doubles always made my neck hurt. And eventually I just had to come to the reality of like, hey, I don't think I should be doing blast doubles if every time I do it, I have excruciating neck pain. I should probably just do something else. So if you're a grappling athlete and you're always inverting and you're a smaller guy always rolling with bigger guys, you're inverting and you're getting smashed and you're like, man, my lower back is always cooked. You may need to just face the reality that like probably inverting against all these big guys and getting smashed probably just isn't in the cards for you anymore, or at the very least right now. So a little bit of a long-winded answer, but I hope that is helpful. Do you have to go super heavy on back training? If you want to get strong, yes. So when it comes to building strength, not just for your upper back and your pulling strength, but with anything, you do have to push the limits a little bit. You do have to train, not necessarily exceed failure, but you have to get close to the point of failure. That's where real growth happens. So you could do a lot of high rep training for your upper back, a lot of high rep rowing exercises or high rep pull up workouts and things like that. And there's definitely value in doing that. Those things can help improve your athleticism in local muscular endurance, lactate buffering capacity, even stimulating hypertrophy. But if you want to get strong, you got to lift some heavy ass weights. If you want to build a strong back, you got to do some heavy rows, you got to do some heavy pull downs and some heavy pullovers. Haven't lifted in 2 months after a move, currently looking for a gym, but being lazy now. Should I be doing bodyweight workouts in the meantime? Gage, you should be doing whatever you need to do to get the work done. So if you admitted it, you said you were being lazy, so it sounds like you got to get up, go find yourself a gym membership, and start getting after it. And in the meantime, while you don't have a gym membership, I think doing bodyweight workouts would be awesome. I think it's important that you do whatever is necessary to keep moving towards your goals. And I think it's also important to recognize, like, throughout different seasons of life, training may it might just change, you know? Like, I know for me, when I was in college, my last semester of school, I was so freaking busy trying to finish college, trying to graduate. I hardly did any jiu-jitsu training. I was still going to the gym when I could, but I wasn't really doing any jiu-jitsu training, and that was okay for that season of life. It was like an isolated season of time where it's like, hey, my number one focus right now is not jiu-jitsu. It's just finishing college and graduating and then moving on. Once I finish college, I'm going to train a ton. And that's exactly what I did. So, Gage, you know, if you just moved, that's awesome. You probably like have to take some time to settle into the new crib, settle into the new area that you're living in and all that stuff. But probably doesn't need to take too much to get settled in. You could probably start doing something. So find yourself a gym membership and get to work. If you had only 5 exercises for BJJ, what would it be and why? So I get the sentiment behind this question, but I think it's important to keep in mind that there's no like best exercise. There's no good exercises. There's no bad exercises. Exercises are tools. So we got to make sure we just pair the tools with the right job. If you know you were a contractor building a house and you said you only have 5 tools, what tools would they be? It's like, well, what job am I doing? Am I laying the foundation or am I putting up drywall? Am I adding tiles to the roof or am I running electrical wiring? All of those different jobs require some tools that maybe have some crossover, but most of those jobs are going to be completely different and you're going to have different tools for each of those jobs. However, if you're asking me like what are my some of my 5 favorite exercises for BJJ, I can definitely answer that. And I would say lately I've been just really enjoying doing heavy lunges, like heavy dumbbell lunges, heavy safety squat bar lunges. Those have been super fun. I've been really enjoying heavy pull-ups, so doing heavy false grip pull-ups lately have been great. I love doing Bulgarian split squats. That's already 2 lower body exercises, so I should probably pick another upper body one. I like doing dumbbell bench. Dumbbell bench is fun. And then probably something explosive. I really like doing different types of like depth jumps. So like stepping off of a box down onto the floor and bouncing off the floor onto another box. I really like doing that. So I'd say currently right now, those are my 5 favorite grappling exercises. Should I lift before or after jiu-jitsu practice, and how many times a week should I lift? Fantastic question. So in my opinion, I have found that most athletes have had better success and better results when they lift heavy before they go roll hard. And here's the reason why. When we go to the gym, the intent of what we do in the gym is all to help our training on the mat. And we can get a great training stimulus in the gym and still have energy left over to go balls to the wall at jiu-jitsu. And if you're going to do both in the same day, I would suggest doing something in the gym for like 45, 60 minutes, then go to jiu-jitsu later in the day. That way you can get in a solid workout. You have a lot of control over the intensity, the training volume, and how you're managing fatigue within that workout. You can go to jiu-jitsu, roll hard, leave it all out on the mat, and then spend the rest of the day focused on recovery. When you do it the other way around, where you roll really hard at jiu-jitsu and then try to have a good workout afterwards, that's not to say that that workout is a waste of time. It's not. It's just a lot tougher to get a good training stimulus when you already show up to the workout so fatigued from the work you did at jiu-jitsu. So in my opinion, and what I have most of my athletes do, is I have them lift heavy, then roll hard, or I have them just do it on completely separate days. So maybe they go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they roll hard at jiu-jitsu Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. As far as how many times a week you should go to the gym, I usually suggest everyone just go lift as many times as you can each and every single week, just as long as it doesn't negatively impact your overall jiu-jitsu training. For most of the people I've coached over the last few years, that averages out to about 2 to 4 workouts per week. You can make a lot of great progress doing 2 strength sessions per week. You can also make a lot of great progress doing 4 strength sessions per week. If you do less than 2 sessions per week, you may be able to maintain going to the gym 1 time a week, but you're really not making that much progress forward. You can definitely make progress going to the gym 5, 6 times a week, but that's so much time spent in the gym that it does make it really hard to recover and still get in some good quality jiu-jitsu sessions. If given 2 hours of gym sessions for muscle strengthening for wrestling, how would you do it? What exercises? So if I had 2 hours in the gym, which is typically how long I'm at the gym, this is how I would structure it. I would do about 5, maybe 10 minutes of mobility work, just whatever mobility work feels good. So for me, that's usually some form of foam rolling, some form of some light static stretching. Then I move into my warm-up. I'm a big fan of doing something called winning warm-ups. This was popularized by Matt Winning. He's an all-time world record holder in both equipped powerlifting and raw powerlifting. And his warm-ups are higher volume warm-ups with exercises that are going to contribute to the main movement that you're doing. So for example, say you have a max effort lower body squat workout. So you're going to do heavy Zercher box squats. The warm-up that you would do is something for your hamstrings, something for your glutes, something for your abs, and something for your quads. So that could look like banded leg curls, that could look like sissy squats, that could look like kettlebell swings, and maybe like some hanging leg raises. You would do 3 to 4 sets of those, and then you would move into your main movement. And that's kind of how I structure my own warm-ups. In my warm-ups, I try to do about 3 to 4 sets. And the intent of these warm-ups is to get in a little extra training volume in at the front end of the workout. So I'm not going super heavy, I'm not going close to failure, but I am doing enough work in that warm-up to get a pretty good pump. I don't want to be fatigued going into my first heavy strength movement for that workout, but I want to be really warm, I want to be sweating, I want my heart rate to be a little bit high, and I want to have a really good pump. Then from there, I move into my main movements. When doing a max effort workout, I typically structure it as I pick one max effort main movement. This is usually some big compound lift that is going to be for the upper or lower body. And it's something that is something that I can like really put a lot of effort into and something that I can overload pretty good. So for example, that may look like a Zercher box squat, a safety squat bar squat, a sumo deadlift, a trap bar deadlift. Maybe there's like some other variations in there where it's a pause squat or a deadlift off of blocks or something like that. It's usually like a big compound lift that I'm gonna work up to a 1 to 5 rep max. You wanna do something that you can do pretty heavy, like you wouldn't wanna do a single leg Bosu ball squat, mainly because that's so unstable, you can't really load up that much weight on it. You wanna do something that it can be heavy and that you can strain against some heavy load. And so from there, I'd work up to a 1 to 5 rep max, depending on where I'm at in my phases of training or what my training goals are. That will dictate whether I do a 1 rep, a 3 rep, or a 5 rep max. But once you work up to that max, then we move on to our secondary exercises. When doing secondary exercises, there are 3 ways we can pick secondary exercises. You can pick max effort secondary exercises by doing something that you didn't address in your main movement. So say you do a squat for your main movement. What you didn't address would be unilateral work, so some form of lunge. You also didn't address any hip hinging stuff. So in your secondary movement, you would make it a lunge and or a hip hinge movement. Now, the other way you can pick secondary exercises is you can make it a variation of the same movement that you just did. So if you did a squat for your main movement, you can make your secondary movement another squat variation. So say you did like a super heavy, like 3 rep max box squat. Then your secondary movement could be a pause squat or maybe like a heel elevated astergrass squat, something like that. And then the third way that you can pick secondary exercises is to pick exercises based off of whatever weaknesses you found in your main movement. So say you did a heavy squat for your main movement and you saw that as you were straining through, like you filmed your set, and then you saw that as you were straining through those last couple reps, your upper back rounded a little bit. So that would be a sign, hey, we got to work on our upper back stability. We got to work on our upper back strength. So we're going to pick a secondary movement that directly targets that weakness. So maybe we do some Zercher good mornings, or maybe we do like a snatch grip RDL or something like that. So those are the 3 ways you can pick secondary movements. And I would pick 1 or 2 secondary movements for that workout. When we do max effort main movements, you're working up to a 1 to 5 rep max. When doing secondary movements, typically how I structure the sets and reps is 3 to 6 sets of like 3 to 10 reps. And that's a lot of range. There's a lot of variety that can be mixed in there, but a lot of it just comes down to whatever your training goals are. So we hit 1 max effort main movement, 1 to 2 secondary movements, and then I pick 2 to 4 accessory exercises. These are usually like single joint or like quote unquote bodybuilding exercises to focus on specific weaknesses or specific muscle groups that I want to target to just continue to get stronger, to continue to stimulate muscle growth, or to work around some type of injury. So in this lower body workout example, our main movement is a Zercher box squat. Our secondary movement, say, is a Zercher split squat and a Zercher good morning. Then we move into our accessory exercises. Say we do some sort of leg curl, we drag a sled, reverse hypers for the lower back, and then say we do like dumbbell side bends for some more core work. That's typically how I would structure a workout. If I had 2 hours in the gym, I could probably get through all of that stuff that I just laid out in about 75 minutes. So we have 45 minutes to go. There is some debate on whether or not it's worth even being in the gym for that long. But if you had some extra time, you could do some conditioning. This is what I do a lot of times for the athletes I coach. We run through a workout like that, and then I have them do some conditioning. And we make sure our conditioning is in the same time domain as the main movement, because you don't, not that you can't do like hard strength training and then go right into a really long conditioning session. You're just not going to get the strongest training stimulus for either one of those things if you pair them together. So we want to make sure that the conditioning that we do tends to be very closely aligned with the same kind of time domain or energy systems that we used for the main movement. So if you're doing a heavy squat and you work up to a 3 rep max Zercher box squat and your top set takes 15 seconds. Well, 15 seconds is your time domain. The conditioning you do for that workout should be intervals of around 10 to 15 seconds at a pretty high intensity. So hopefully that is a good enough breakdown as for how I would spend 2 hours in the gym. When I was training at Super Training Gym with the AM crew, we would be there for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and there was really no need to be there for that long. We were just messing around way too much and goofing off and having fun. But now that I train by myself, I can usually get most of that work done in like 75 minutes if I'm not messing around on my phone and trying to find funny YouTube videos to watch between sets. 3 weeks till Worlds, any recommendations on the type of training? I'll be completely honest with you, like at this point, the work is almost done. Like there's not a whole lot that you can do that's going to make you drastically stronger in 3 weeks, drastically improve your conditioning in 3 weeks, or drastically improve your skills in 3 weeks. That being said, my recommendations for you is if you only have 3 weeks until Worlds, I would focus on trying to replicate the demands of the competition as much as possible in your training and get used to that kind of competitive environment. So something that I'll have athletes do sometimes is I'll tell them, I actually had some guys that were competing in Master Worlds and I had them do this. I said, hey, try to get people on the side of the mat to coach you. Like get used to hearing people yelling at you and screaming at you and all that stuff. And try to get used to what it's like to strategize your game plan in the match. So if your game plan, like say you come from a wrestling background and your game plan is, hey, I need to get like 2 points on the board right away. I don't want this guy to pull guard and take away my ability to get an easy 2 points. So I need to make sure that my first move hits hard and hits fast and I'm able to get that takedown. Maybe you don't have a wrestling background and you're thinking like, I don't want to give up 2 points just to get into the guard that I want to work my game. So I'm going to make sure that I get my grips right away. I sit to guard and start working on off balancing my opponent and getting to work. So over the next 3 weeks, there's not a whole lot that you can do to get insanely strong, drastically improve your conditioning or anything like that. Because you should have been doing that at least for several months before now. However, what you can do and what you can make a lot of progress in is preparing yourself for the stressors of competition and for the rule set, for the game plan of the competition and all that stuff. I had a multi-ligament knee surgery. I love lifting heavy, but I'm afraid of hitting legs with the amount of weight I used to do. What do you recommend? Sean, I'm sorry to hear about your knee surgery, dog. I hope it was successful. And you know what? You're right. It's probably not going to be smart to load up your 1 rep max day 1 out of knee surgery and try to squat. It's going to take some time to work yourself back up. And my biggest encouragement for you would be to just get used to the idea of hey, I'm not where I was. I need to build myself back up. You can probably build yourself back up very successfully and even surpass the point at which you were previously at, but it's going to take some time. The best example I have, at least in my own experience, was with my neck injury. I had a series of little neck injuries that led to a much bigger neck injury, and I wouldn't say I don't have a strong bench anyways, but I went from my normal bench press to then not even being able to do a push-up. I had nerve damage in both of my arms, and this left arm in particular, I couldn't do a single push-up, which was crazy. And I realized oh my gosh, it is going to be a long journey to get back to the point where not only can I even do a push-up, but I can even bench a plate again and not get pinned underneath it. And so it takes you basically got to face reality and recognize okay, I got to set my ego aside and take this pretty slow and just take the wins where I can get them. So for me, that looked hey, I know I'm not going to be able to bench a plate right now. I'm going to be stoked if I can do 5 push-ups. That would be amazing. And then you hit that win and then you move on to the next thing. So for you, yeah, maybe your knees and the ligaments around your knees aren't where they were before surgery, but maybe you can gradually work yourself back and say, hey, I want to be able to leg press my body weight with 2 legs. Awesome. You hit that marker. Okay, I want to be able to leg press my body weight for 10 reps with 2 legs. Great. Then you move on to, I want to try to leg press my body weight with 1 leg. And you just keep stacking wins where you can. And gradually over time, as you continue to go through that process, you'll be able to get back to where you were and hopefully even exceed where you were in the past. How often, okay, big fan from Iraq, how often should I train my neck? So you can train your neck almost every day. Your neck recovers pretty quickly compared to something if you did heavy leg training every single day, it's going to be hard to recover from one day to the next. But you can almost always do something for your neck. You just want to make sure you're adding enough variety in there so that way you're not running into some overuse injuries or you're not drawing from the well so much that you start to run into some issues. So I don't train my neck every day anymore, but there are definitely some days or some seasons where I would do neck training every day. And one thing I would do is I'd take a kettlebell and I'd say, I'm going to do 100 one-arm kettlebell shrugs every day. And I'm going to run that for 30 days. And that was pretty fun. And yeah, my traps were pretty sore, but then after a while, the soreness goes away. You don't really feel it as much, and you're able to build up some good, I don't know, maximal strength in my traps increased all that much, but my traps definitely got bigger. You can also do the same thing with banded neck rotations or neck isometrics and things like that. So you're only doing a couple working sets, and you can do that every day. If you don't feel like training your neck every single day, well, then you can just kind of break that up and do a lot more at the end of 3 of the workouts that you do each week. So sometimes I'll have a daily neck movement that I'll train every single day for a little while. Other times when I don't feel like doing that, I'll say, okay, I'm going to the gym 3 times in this phase of, or 3 times a week in this phase of training. At the end of each workout, I'm going to do some form of neck training. So on workout number 1, that may look hey, I'm going to do some get on the neck machine, do some weighted neck flexion. On the next day, I'm going to do neck rotation. Day 3, I'm going to do different types of neck isometrics and go from there. Split max effort upper, max effort lower, dynamic effort full body, every session 35 to 40 minutes. Okay, question mark. So yeah, you can definitely do max effort upper. You can, how I would structure it, if I'm reading this correctly, is I would make one session max effort upper, another session max effort lower, and then another session dynamic effort full body. I do not suggest at all combining max effort upper and max effort lower in the same training session. And here's the reason why. It's not to say that you can't. I mean, like technically you could, but the max effort movement that you do first, you're going to get a lot of great benefit out of, and then trying to hit that in your next true max effort movement is going to be pretty tough. So say you do like max effort deadlifts, and then you go right into max effort bench press. Probably going to get a lot of benefit out of the max effort deadlift exercise, but you're going to be pretty fatigued going into the max effort bench press exercise where you may not be able to get as much benefit out of it. And then the other thing too is doing that much max effort training in one training session can be a lot to recover from, and it can just be pretty tough. So in my opinion, and what I've seen work best for the athletes I coach, is we only do max effort upper or max effort lower for a training session. Sometimes we will do max effort upper and then pair that with dynamic effort lower, and then vice versa, max effort lower paired with dynamic effort upper, but we never do max effort upper and max effort lower in the same session. At least I haven't seen it to be that beneficial or effective. Not that it's not beneficial, it just leads to more problems than for what it's worth. Lifting and rolling in the same day, yes, you can absolutely lift heavy and roll hard in the same day. It just all comes down to how you're recovering between those sessions and also how you're fueling for each of those sessions. When I'm doing consults or when I'm coaching athletes and they say, hey, I'm having a hard time with energy when I'm lifting heavy and rolling hard in the same day, it often is because there's something missing in their hydration or in their nutrition. So it's important to make sure that you're using your nutrition to provide you with fuel for the training session that you're doing, and then using nutrition to immediately help you recover after that first training session. So if you're doing, say you work out in the morning, you should have something in your system a little bit to help you get through that workout. So that can be like a couple tablespoons of honey just before you hit the gym. My favorite pre-workout of all time is 2 tablespoons of honey and a double shot of espresso. That gets me freaking fired up. So you hit those, and then you also, make sure you're like drinking plenty of water, electrolytes, all that stuff. You do your workout, and then immediately after that workout, the goal should be to replenish nutrients and recover as much as possible between the last rep of your workout and when you get to jiu-jitsu. So that includes things like replenishing water, but also replenishing carbohydrates, protein, electrolytes, all that stuff. So pre-workout, I'll have 2 tablespoons of honey, double shot of espresso, water with electrolytes, and then like other pre-workout supplements like L-carnitine, acetylcholine, and some other stuff like that. Then post-workout, usually follow that up with fast digesting carbohydrates, fast digesting protein, and water. And usually what I do is whey protein, cyclic dextrin, which is just like a carb powder, orange juice, and a bunch of water. Put that in a shaker, drink that on the way home from the gym, and then I follow that up with my first main meal of the day, which is usually eggs, ground beef, potatoes, and white rice and Greek yogurt. So that's like a good variety of protein, carbs, and fats. That is like the big first meal of the day, which is going to help replenish a lot of the nutrients that I used during that workout, but also help me recover for when it's time to go to jiu-jitsu. Then before I go to jiu-jitsu, I have more electrolytes, more honey, and then I go roll hard at jiu-jitsu, do my thing over there. And then after jiu-jitsu, I kind of wash, rinse, repeat the same thing, trying to replenish carbohydrates, trying to replenish water, and getting in some easily digestible protein. So if you're lifting heavy and rolling hard in the same day, nutrition and hydration is going to be a huge it's going to be something that's very important for you to dial in to make sure that you have the energy to get in good training sessions, recover between those training sessions, and make sure they're able to repeat that multiple days throughout the week. Can you repeat your daily food schedule? I need to write it down. So I'll put it this way, like my nutrition schedule and what I eat every single day is what works best for me. And so if I repeat everything and you write it down and you copy it, which is totally fine, just keep in mind that may be beneficial for you, but you're a different athlete. You have a different training schedule for me. So it may not be what's most appropriate for you. And so instead, I'll tell you about the principles of nutrition that I follow. And then from there, you can take those principles of nutrition, apply that to your situation, and ultimately get the best results. I think in the last Q&A I did, someone asked me a question: what was the biggest thing that helped me make the transition from a purple belt to brown belt? And I had said I shifted my thinking in jiu-jitsu from, instead of just trying to copy and paste moves, I started to learn about the principles of submission grappling and trying to improve those principles. And I think the same thing works for strength and conditioning. I think the same thing works for nutrition, where, we could copy and paste someone else's meal plan, but what it would actually lead us to get even better results is if we understand the principles of why they're eating what they're eating, then we can apply that to our own situation. So for me, currently, I'm training about once a day, 6 days per week. So I only have one training session, and I really try to focus on making sure that that training session is as locked in as possible. And then because I don't have anything else as far as training goes going on throughout the rest of the day, I don't need to worry about being as dialed in with my nutrition specifically for training, mainly because the training session's over. So what it looks like for me currently, and this is just for this season of life, this isn't what I've always done, this isn't what I have all my athletes currently doing, this is just based on what I'm currently doing. So I want to make sure that I get in a really, really good training session, and I usually train in the morning. Kind of varies what time I go to the gym and what time I go to jiu-jitsu, but I train before lunch. I'll put it that way. And so the first thing I do is I make sure that first thing in the morning, I'm working on my hydration and getting in some easily digestible carbohydrates, which are going to act as a fuel source for the training session that I do, whether I go to the gym or whether I go to jiu-jitsu. And usually what that looks like is water, electrolytes, and some coffee, and 2 tablespoons of honey. The 2 tablespoons of honey are going to cover the fast digesting carbohydrates. The coffee is going to provide some quick acting caffeine. Water and electrolytes are going to handle hydration. Then when it comes to supplements, currently, like if I'm out of a bunch of supplements right now, I got to order some more. But depending on what kind of workout I'm doing, that will determine what kind of supplements I take before I hit the gym. But usually when I go to the gym, I make a shake of easily digestible carbohydrates, some whey protein, and lots of water. And usually that's like 1 scoop of whey protein, 25 grams of cyclic dextrin, which is carb powder, some electrolytes, and a bunch of water. And what that'll do is that'll give me something that I can drink right after I'm done training to quickly kickstart the recovery process, replenish carbohydrates, replenish water, get in some good quality protein that's fast digesting, and kickstart that recovery process. Then when I get home, I have like my main meal, which usually includes like some eggs, ground beef, potatoes, white rice, Greek yogurt, some more honey, trying to think. Oh, and usually another coffee. And so most of my carbohydrate intake for the day is all around that training session. I have a decent amount of carbohydrates before I go to the gym. I have some carbohydrates at the gym as I'm sipping on that shake, or at least, if I'm not sipping on it during my workout, I drink it when I get in the car and I'm done with that workout. And then I have a bunch of carbs after that workout. So I put a lot of my carbohydrates around the training session because I want the carbs to train hard. I want the carbs afterwards to help with recovery. And then throughout the rest of the day, I'm just having like a steady intake of protein, some fat, and all that, and also some carbohydrates. But the carbohydrates, they're not as much of an emphasis the farther away I get from the workout. if that makes sense. When I'm doing grappling training sessions in the morning, it looks very, very, very similar, where carbohydrates before, water, electrolytes, caffeine. After grappling training, a lot of carbohydrates, lots of protein, lots of water, electrolytes, all that stuff. And then throughout the rest of the day, it's kind of shifting a little bit more towards protein and fat because we're getting farther away from the training session. The only time that it changes, and this is like a little experiment that I'm just trying for myself, is when I do my runs. So I do about one long run per week. I haven't done it in a couple of weeks, ironically, because I've been sick. But once I'm not sick, your boy's going to get back out there and do his road work. But something I've been playing around with is using L-carnitine and methylene blue prior to my run. And because L-carnitine really, really helps with using fatty acids as an energy source, I've been, instead of using my pre-workout as coffee and honey, I've been using coffee and raw milk. Since raw milk has quite a bit more fat in there, I'll drink that about like an hour or so before I go out for my run. Then usually like 5 to 30 minutes before I go on my run, I'll have 4 milligrams of methylene blue and then 300 milligrams of L-carnitine, and then I'll hit my run. So I've been playing around with that a little bit. That's been working out pretty good and has been pretty fun so far. If I'm in a deficit, how should I train and how much between jiu-jitsu and the gym? So depends on how much of a deficit you're in and what your overall training goals are. If you're in a deficit because you're just trying to decrease body fat, you can still get a good amount of training in as long as you're not in too much of a deficit. If you're in a really severe calorie deficit, it's like you're gonna not have much energy to train anyways. So you could go to the gym, but your workouts probably aren't gonna feel that great. So usually when I'm helping athletes with fat loss and helping them lean out, we do wanna be in a bit of a deficit, but we don't wanna be in a giant deficit. I try to, like, the way I look at it is let's try to decrease body fat as slow as possible. Maybe not as slow as possible, but we want to consistently decrease body fat, consistently see a good trend in decreasing body weight, but we don't want it to be too fast. We only want to lose about 0.5% to 1% in average total body weight per week. And if we're seeing that drop happen faster than that, where they're losing like 1.5% or 2% of total body weight per week, that means they're probably in too much of a deficit or they're doing a little bit too much training, and we need to adjust one of those things. Usually I don't like telling people to do less training. I would rather just give them more food back and say, hey, let's just not be in that much of a deficit. And for some people, they can be in a, very not low calorie deficit, very mild calorie deficit, I'll put it that way. And they can kind of just maintain their typical training schedule when they were at maintenance or in a calorie surplus, but they may not have as much intensity for all of those sessions. So when someone was at a caloric maintenance, if they were, going to jiu-jitsu 5 days a week, they were lifting 3 days a week, and they did hard sparring at 4 out of those 5 grappling sessions, maybe when they're in a caloric deficit or a mild caloric deficit, I might tell them like, hey, we have a little bit less energy going on throughout the week. We're still going to do everything we can to leverage most of your calories around those hardest training sessions. But instead of going balls to the wall, hard in the paint, 4 out of 5 grappling sessions, let's just plan on going balls to the wall on 3 out of those grappling sessions. See how you respond and go from there. I fell out of love with jiu-jitsu. I don't know where to start again. Any advice? Okay, I'll be honest, this happened to me last year. Last year, jiu-jitsu was just not fun for the majority of last year. And it took a while for me to kind of understand why and figure out why do I have hardly any desire to go to jiu-jitsu anymore, and just I don't really care about jiu-jitsu as much. I know I need to go. I know it's good for me. In some ways, it's still fun, but the motivation just wasn't there. And I think that's totally fine. I think we go through phases where our enjoyment for certain things just ebbs and flows. you know? And I think with jiu-jitsu for me, like when I first started training jiu-jitsu, I would do anything I possibly could to make it to jiu-jitsu class. Like I would skip class at school to go train. I went to a private Christian college, and one of the requirements was that twice a week you go to chapel. But you could get a chapel exemption if you had like an internship or you had a job that scheduled work hours during chapel. So what I did was I had my girlfriend, who's now my wife. We had different last names because we weren't married yet. So I had her write a note or like this thing basically saying like, oh, I'm doing a like internship or work stuff during chapel, so I could get a chapel exemption and then I could go train at jiu-jitsu. Like I was like doing everything I possibly could to train jiu-jitsu. Fast forward about 7 years or 8 years, and it was kind of flip-flopped on its head. It was like, man, I'd almost like buy any reason to not have to go to jiu-jitsu today. And I think that's just like, that's totally natural. Like sometimes it's just not as fun anymore, and sometimes it's just not as enjoyable anymore. And it really just all comes down to, what are your goals and what do you need to do to get closer to those goals? And do you need to make like adjustments and changes based on those goals? So if you're prepping for a jiu-jitsu competition and this competition is really, really important to you and you're in the thick of it with training camp and you're 3 weeks out and you're like, gosh, I really don't love any of this. Like, I don't even want to train today. I'm exhausted. I'm banged up. I'm tired. I got this competition coming up. I want to do well in the competition, but I really have no love for jiu-jitsu right now. If that's a situation you're in, remember what your goals are. If your goal is to go out there and push yourself and challenge yourself to the best of your ability, then you need to do what's necessary to be prepared for that, which is going to include going to jiu-jitsu. If you're in a different point of life, which is kind of where I was last year, where I was like, man, I kind of just do jiu-jitsu for fun right now. And because of the nature of my job, jiu-jitsu has felt like my job a lot over the last couple years. And so for me, I kind of came to the realization of like, man, I need to keep jiu-jitsu fun. And the way like jiu-jitsu is really fun for me is when I get to go and train with my friends and get to go and train with my favorite training partners. So I try to set up times where it was like, oh, like, is this guy going? Is this guy going? Is this guy going? All right, all like my favorite people are going. So I'm gonna go to jiu-jitsu and train really hard with them. And if they're not going, maybe I'll do something else that would be mentally a little bit more fun for that day. And for me personally, like I went through that for what felt like probably 6 months. And then after about 6 months, like that motivation and that love for jujitsu started coming back again. And I know for me, a good like litmus test of where I'm at with jujitsu is how much time I'm thinking about jujitsu and studying jujitsu when I'm not on the mat. And so last year, I was like, I was watching no instructionals, no YouTube videos, nothing. Like I was not watching competition. Like I just did not care. But now currently, fast forward a year later, I'm falling asleep thinking about what I'm gonna do at jiu-jitsu the next training session. When commercials come up, when my wife and I are watching movies, I'll be on YouTube watching jiu-jitsu videos. And so it's just something that ebbs and flows. And you just gotta, I would say like, make sure you keep doing what's necessary based on the goals that you have, regardless if you feel motivated to do it or not. That's where discipline comes in. Then also keep in mind, like, if jiu-jitsu is just a hobby for you, like, find ways to keep it a hobby. If it's a hobby when all your boys are there and you're able to get in some good training sessions, try to find ways to train more with them. If jiu-jitsu is most fun when you go to open mats, like, maybe just go to open mats for a couple weeks and go from there. How to balance strength and explosive training in the same week as a wrestler. So wrestling is super explosive, and you also need a high amount of strength. So you do need to work on both of those. And one of the best ways to do that is, at least in my opinion and in my experience coaching wrestling for a number of years and working with wrestlers for a long time, is using what's called the conjugate system. If you're watching this live session, you probably have heard me talk about the conjugate system before, but the conjugate system uses three main training methods. The max effort method, which is really focused on developing your absolute strength. the dynamic effort method, which focuses a lot more on speed and explosive power, and the repetition effort method, which focuses on general physical preparedness, stimulating muscle growth, working around injuries, and all that stuff. What's great about the conjugate system is that you can train all of those qualities every single week and gradually see progress on all of those qualities as you continue to keep training. And so you would just want to make sure that you tackle heavy strength work and explosive work every single week. And there's a few different ways that you can do that. One way that I like to do that is using the condensed conjugate model, which I picked up from my guy, Phil DeRue. And so I'll tell you how I work on both strength work and explosive power work. So day one is going to be a max effort lower body workout. This is like my big heavy strength focused day for the lower body. So if I'm doing heavy squats, I'm doing it on that day. If I'm going to do heavy deadlifts, it's going to be on that day. Heavy lunges, split squats, good mornings, all that good stuff. It's on that big max effort lower body workout. I also do some repetition effort work, so like banded leg curls, some adductor work, glute work, lower back stuff, all that good stuff. And so that day, the max effort day, is where I do most of my strength work for the lower body. On day two, that's when I do most of my strength work for the upper body. So that's max effort bench press or floor press. That's going to be heavy pull-ups, heavy rows, different types of trap work, neck work, trunk rotation, all that good stuff. So those first 2 days, one of them is for the lower body, one of them is for the upper body. Both of those are focused on strength. On day 3, that's when I do a full body workout that's all about being fast and violently explosive for the upper and lower body. That's our full body dynamic effort workout. So this is where we do things like box jumps, different types of plyometric exercises. You guys have probably seen me doing those exercises where I put my arm in a band and I just spaz out on the band back and forth. Those are called AFSM exercises. I'll do stuff like that. The whole point of that full body dynamic effort day is to be violently explosive, super fast, and like really twitchy. And so I'll do stuff for the upper and lower body in that workout. And then that way I'm able to cover both of those things throughout one training week. So we make sure we got our strength work in, we made sure we got our explosive power training in for both the upper and the lower body. And inside the strength matrix, I got a ton of different training courses that are all focused on blending those things together. So training courses that allow you to get brutally strong and make sure that you're getting in plenty of explosive power work. If you're a wrestling athlete, the Bracket Smasher training program is probably going to be the best training program for you to check out. If you've been wrestling for a while, if you've been strength training in the gym for a while, Bracket Smasher is going to help you out. That is a condensed conjugate styled training course, which focuses on helping you get brutally strong, stimulating muscle growth, improving your conditioning, getting faster and more explosive, and really helping you prepare for competition. And so if you're a wrestler, Bracket Smasher would be the one that I would suggest for you. Next question, besides rotating muscles, how do you deal with post-injection pain and pinning multiple compounds a day? So that's kind of like the biggest thing, is just making sure you're rotating different injection sites. The other thing too is just being aware of what you're injecting. Some stuff causes quite a bit more post-injection pain than others. So for example, if you're injecting something like glutathione, I don't know of anyone that's had post-injection pain with glutathione compared to injecting something like L-carnitine, which can be a little bit spicier, so to speak. And some people do have some post-injection pain with L-carnitine. So you do have to be aware of, like, some compounds are going to cause that a little bit more frequently than others. And then also just making sure that you're not being a dingus when you're injecting. So making sure that you're taking it slow, making sure that you're using the proper technique and all that stuff. That'll definitely help. But that's not to say that I never get it. It still happens. It's part of injecting stuff, is it can kind of lead to some of that. It'd be like that sometimes. How to improve my bench press lifting? Any advice to progress in the weight that I'm lifting? So I haven't seen you bench, so I haven't I don't know where your bench press technique is, but one of the best things that you can do to improve your bench press strength is to improve your overall bench press technique. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to make huge gains in your bench. When I started training at Super Training Gym, my bench press skyrocketed, not because I got like 20 pounds bigger and packed on 20 pounds of muscle mass. It was mainly because the guys at that gym really helped me lock in my bench press technique. So lock that stuff in first. Then look at how you're training your bench press. If you're only training your bench press every couple weeks, you should, like, an easy way to improve your bench press is to just train it more often. Then from there, you would want to look at, okay, where are your specific strengths and weaknesses? Are you really strong off the chest, but you kind of always fail at lockout? Are you an athlete who is more explosive than you are strong? So every rep and every weight looks like it flies off your chest until you add 10 more pounds and then you get pinned. So you don't have a good ability to strain through that bench press. Or are you someone who is stronger than you are fast, where every single set you're like straining through the whole thing, but you don't really have the speed off the chest to carry through into some of those heavier weights? It would be really dependent on a lot of your own specific weaknesses, I would say. Quick question from my dog, Anthony. I'm looking to put on size. I was thinking of going above 141, maybe 150, and then cutting back down. Would you advise that big of a bulk? I'm looking to compete in December or January. Fantastic question. So if you are a lighter athlete, if you're a rooster weight, featherweight, lightweight, and you're trying to get bigger and pack on some muscle so that way next time you compete, you're able to be brutally strong, just put the work on people. If you're going to be building muscle, or if you have the goal of adding on some size, I like to think of it as like you want to add on that size pretty slow and pretty conservatively. A big mistake I made when I tried to bulk up, when I first, like the very first bulk I did, I went from 143 to 176. And I was all dimple bellied out. Like I did not pack on a bunch of muscle mass because then when I got lean again, I only weighed 149. So one thing that I suggest for most athletes that are going to be increasing in weight is try to increase in body weight, average weekly body weight, by about 0.5% to 1% each week. If you're increasing body weight more than that each week, you might be going a little bit too fast. If you're increasing body weight less than that each week, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you probably have a little bit more room to keep growing. The other thing that I would suggest is making sure that your nutrition is on point. As you're increasing your daily caloric intake, you want to make sure that you're increasing your daily caloric intake in a way that is going to contribute to you being able to still have good quality training sessions and to be able to pack on some quality tissue. So that would look like making sure you're still getting in plenty of good protein, making sure that you're increasing your carbohydrate intake in a way that allows you to still have great training sessions on the mat and get crazy good pumps in the gym. I actually have a new training course that's coming out hopefully next month once I finish it all up, called Mat Jacked, which basically is a full course on how to increase muscle mass and how to bulk as a grappling athlete. The other thing that I would suggest too is you want to make sure that you're continuing to work on your conditioning a little bit. That's another mistake that I've made in the past where I've like only gone all in on just bulking up and not working on my conditioning. And then when it was time to compete again, I felt like I was kind of starting a few steps behind because not only did I have to decrease my body fat percentage to get back into my weight class, but I also had to rebuild my conditioning again because I spent so much time not working on it. So if your goal, Anthony, is to move up to about 141, maybe 150 pounds, just take it slow. Try to increase your weekly average body weight by about 0.5% to 1% each week. And if your goal is to compete again in December or January, you may be able to make it all the way up to 150 at that rate by December, but probably a little bit more of a realistic goal would be to kind of expect to make that increase by January. Want to have a nice steady increase in average body weight. It's really not great to have these big spikes and giant ups and downs in body weight. Typically what I suggest for most people is to be at maintenance calories for about 3 to 6 weeks or so, then go into a time of being in a caloric surplus for about 8 weeks. Maybe sometimes you can push that to 12 weeks, but 8 weeks is kind of the sweet spot I found. After about 8 weeks, stay at maintenance again. So you're kind of like step loading, where you kind of stay consistent for a period of time, you go into a surplus, you hang out at that heavier body weight for a little bit, allow your body to get acclimated to that heavier body weight, and then you go for another little bit of a push upwards in body weight and go from there. A blue belt practitioner here, what weighted exercises should I do for BJJ, and what weighted exercises do I not need? Thanks. So Curtis, weighted calisthenic exercises are fantastic, but I would suggest first, and this is only coming from someone that doesn't have very much information about your current athletic background or your current strength levels, but I would say build up your body weight strength and calisthenics first. I'm not a big fan of having someone jump immediately right into weighted pull-ups, weighted dips, stuff like that. I'd much rather see someone build up their work capacity, build up their local muscular endurance and strength with just pure body weight calisthenics first, then move into something like weighted calisthenic movements. So the standards that I have for the athletes that I coach is, at a minimum, if you're a competitive grappling athlete, it doesn't matter what weight class you're in. If you're a competitive grappling athlete, as a guy, you should be able to do 10 pull-ups. If you can't do 10 pull-ups, that's a problem. Fix that. If you can do 10 pull-ups, I'd encourage you to push that up to 15. Like a good base standard of pull-ups for male grappling athletes is 15 reps. If you can do more than 20 pull-ups, you're like at an elite level of pull-up strength. You probably aren't going to get that much additional benefit going from 20 pull-ups to 25 pull-ups to 30 pull-ups. So 15 to 20 is like a really amazing goal to strive for. When it comes to body weight dips, 10 dips at a minimum, 20 dips as a base standard, 30 dips. If you can do more than 30 body weight dips, like you're probably not going to get that much additional benefit by doing 40 dips or 50 dips. So if you can do 20 pull-ups, if you can do 30 dips, I'd say you're at a great spot to start adding some weight to those exercises to build up some of that weighted calisthenic strength. So hope that answers your question. Hey man, can I get a tip? I stopped with jiu-jitsu a year ago. I didn't have time and stopped having fun, and now I want to come back. What should I do to start having fun again? Dude, thanks for the question. I would honestly just encourage you to just jump back in there, bro. And I'd also encourage you, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like, don't put too much pressure on yourself to like have to sign up for a competition right away, or have to go 5 days a week and roll every single round right away and be super hard and aggressive about it. Just like go in, like say what's up to all your friends. If you still got friends that train, and just go in and have fun, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. I think when we put pressure on ourselves, that can sometimes take the fun out of it. Pressure is good. Like there should be some pressure to improve. There should be some pressure to grow and to make progress. But when you're just getting back into it, like just do it and have fun. And I'd encourage you to make smaller commitments to yourself with that. So don't listen to this and say like, okay, Coach Jay said I should go back, so I'm gonna go back. I'm going every day for the next 30 days. Like that might be a little too much too soon. Maybe just say, hey, listen to what Coach Jay said on Instagram. I'm going to commit to going 3 times in the next 2 weeks. And then honor that commitment to yourself, and don't put any more pressure on yourself than what's necessary. Go in, have a good time, kick it with your bros on the map, and go from there. Pull-ups are a nightmare for me. I feel like I'm too heavy. Mike, dude, that's a really common issue that a lot of grapplers have, and that usually comes from 2 things. Either you got to do more pull-ups and you got to get stronger, or you got to decrease body fat. One of those 2 things. Oftentimes, both. Question from Gunjitsu. Thoughts on fascia training? So, with fascia training, it gets a bad rap because it looks so weird and so whack. But unfortunately, I think it's like anything else, right? Like the people that are the biggest proponents of fascia training, they're usually not jacked. They're usually not super strong. They're usually not like incredible athletes. And I think, unfortunately, that paints a bad picture on the value of fascia training. So you look at the guys that are like, just lift, bro, squat, bench, deadlift. And it's like, those guys are crazy big, crazy jacked. It's like, well, that worked for them. They just did squat, bench, deadlift, and those guys are 250 pounds, jacked out of their mind. And then you look at the people that are talking about only doing fascia training and they just swing clubs around and that's it. It's like, okay, they're not that jacked. They're not that explosive. They're not that great combat sport athletes. Like, unfortunately, they're not great representatives of the thing that they're talking so much about. And that's not for everyone that talks about fascia training. It's just like the two extreme ends. However, I do think that there's a lot of value in understanding how fascia works in our body and understanding how fascia kind of integrates all these different things together. And so I don't think either party is doing a great job of being for fascia training or against fascia training. The people that say fascia training is a scam and you just need to freaking lift and not worry about it, I think those people are very short-sighted. I don't think that they're the best sources or the best authorities to speak on stuff like that. The people that say fascia training is all you need to do, and if you squat, bench, deadlift, you're going to destroy your body, I don't think those people are great advocates for what they're talking about either. I think everything can work. I think everything, like every training modality, as goofy as it is, as weird as it is, I truly do believe that there's something to be said that it can all be beneficial and it can all work for something. That doesn't mean that it's going to work for everybody. So there are people that are incredible combat sport athletes and they squat, bench, deadlift. You look at someone like John Jones. Like John Jones, I think he deadlifts 600 pounds. He squats, he does bench. I don't know if he does bench anymore because he tore his pec in sparring. But that guy does like traditional powerlifting. He does other stuff too, but like the clips that we see on Instagram and stuff, he is doing powerlifting. And it works for John Jones. John Jones is the greatest combat sport athlete that has ever lived. So that works for him. There are other guys that do mostly kettlebell work, and they're also great combat sport athletes. There are other guys that only do bodybuilding, and it works well for them. And so that's not to say that any other athlete is doing it wrong. It's just that they found what worked best for them. And I think fascia training has its place in strength and conditioning. I think some of these old heads in strength and conditioning need to learn a little bit more about fascial lines and all that stuff. I also think that the fascial line community and the people that only train that way need to start lifting some heavy ass weights and train harder because it doesn't look like they train very hard sometimes. So all that being said, I think that like if you're on either side of the extreme end, I don't think that's helpful for most people. You can almost look at it as like the carnivore, group versus the vegan group. I don't think that the carnivore diet is the best diet for most athletes, and I don't think that the vegan diet is the most effective diet for most athletes. I think what works best for most people is something in the middle. Yet what gets most clicks and what gets most attention is the carnivore people yelling at the vegan people and the vegan people yelling at the carnivore people. And at the end of the day, it's just not very helpful for all the people like us that are in the middle. So that's that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Lift heavy, roll hard. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.